What's up, everybody? Welcome back to War Sports Wins Above Replacement podcast. We're here, Ben and Dion, getting ready to, midweek sports update and shoot this episode for everybody. Literally, kind of as the day progressed, we had a couple of big signings in MLB with George Springer and then Michael Brantley. Supposedly, I think they're working on the Brantley deal, but Brantley is also going to the Jays. I think just off the top of the show, I mean, what do you think about the Blue Jays signing and kind of jumping into the big boy leagues of the AL East out there?
Yeah, I mean, they got them, those teams like that. You got the Red Sox and the Yankees that they're always going to put money out there, and then you have your A's and your Rays that are going to bring guys up from the farm and try to play that Moneyball type situation. And then you got to have your teams like the Orioles will do sometimes. And now the Blue Jays in this instance, got to throw some money out there and say, hey, they have a young nucleus, a lot of young stars, and they were on the rise last year. They just didn't quite have that experience, didn't have that quite the big names to go with some of those young faces. And hey, you got to take your hats off to them. You got to try it. I mean, it's not going to hurt. It's going to put some, hopefully we'll get some fans, this year we'll get fans again, and it'll put some, fans in the seats, gain some interest from the, on that team from around the league and stuff. And you got to, I feel like you have to, and hats off to them for doing it. I mean, a lot of teams just sit tight with what they have and try to grow through the farm or say, hey, we're a small market team. We don't, that's not what we do. You got to do it, so hats off to them.
Let me read down this lineup of the projected lineup for the Blue Jays, and we'll just have a quick chat on it. George Springer, Cavan Biggio, Bo Bichette, Teoscar Hernandez, Vlad Jr., Lourdes Gurriel, Michael Brantley, Rowdy Tellez, and then Jansen as the catcher, and then they also got Grichuk as the fourth outfielder. I mean that lineup. I mean that's who you going to pitch around, really. I mean, everybody can get hot. They're young, but Brantley's a veteran. George Springer's a veteran. They've been to the playoffs a lot of times together with the Astros, and even back to the Cleveland Indian days for Brantley. But I mean, that's a lot of bats, man. That's a lot of bats.
It is. Vlad Guerrero, I mean, he's half the man he used to be. He's gotten in shape, really dedicated himself to getting in shape. And so, I mean, he looks fantastic. And I'm telling you, man, this team, that could be a scary team. I mean, like I said, they were already dangerous. It was one of our favorite teams playing, DFS every day. That was one of our favorite teams to throw in a couple of those guys. They started getting a little pricey at the end because they put up points and they produced, So I'm excited to see how it's going to be, we get some veteran leadership in there, guys who have been there, been to the top, if nothing else, you can teach them how to bang on some drum, on some
make a little noise, a little bullpen band going on.
But no, I'm excited for them. I mean, hey, I'm excited to see. I'm glad to see. I like seeing these little teams like that. Teams like that you just don't hear of a whole lot making the moves. That's what I like to see. So
yeah, especially in the NL East. I mean, I'm a Red Sox fan. I won't be shy to say that, but. It is kind of nice as an overall baseball fan to see some of these other markets kind of getting some love and taking some chances. On the other end, the Padres doing the same thing, right? They built up the last, they've been really aggressive, the trademark at the end of last year, and then coming into this year with getting Darvish and Snell.
Musgrove in the bullpen,
Yeah. They're just making moves. I mean, I think that they see the Dodgers as kind of having a lock on that division, and they're trying to come up with something that at least if they can't win the division, get a wild card in and make some noise in the postseason. So, big deal. And then the Mets, right? I mean, the Mets with the big Lindor trade. I mean, they're going to have a pretty solid lineup too with, Lindor there with Alonso. Absolutely. And there's some pretty good bats there as well. So.
You said you got it. And again, with the Padres, just like the Blue Jays in the AL, I'm glad to see this. I like to see this. This is what I want to see. I don't want to see Dodgers every year, Yankees every year. It is good. You want to have them there, but you want to have these other teams competing and putting the money where their mouth is. Like I said, you got Tatis, you got Hosmer, you got your lineups.
Moreland's there. Yeah, there's a lot of people.
Yeah, and so let's go for it. That window is so small anymore that, I mean, look at the Cubs. The Cubs had that little window. They went all in. They won it. Got, finally after all those years, they won the World Series, and now that window's closed, and now they got to try to figure it out again. Dodgers are going through that right now. They got through that window. They got money to spend, so they can always keep their window a little longer. But that window doesn't stay open very long. So heck, you got to go for it. Tatis here in a few years is going to have a monster contract coming. Will the Padres be able to afford it? I don't know, but you know how it goes, man. You see it all the time. So I'm glad to see these teams making moves and make baseball interesting. I love baseball, and I love seeing it interesting when other teams you don't expect, come in and start making a push for it. So it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be exciting, and I hope there's more big signings like this going out. A lot of a few more big free agents out there that are solid. That can make some changes, and we'll see what happens.
I'll ask you too. I mean, I'm a fan of baseball, and I think it's misunderstood. I think a lot of people think that it's slow and boring, but once you know the game, I mean, every pitch matters, and even beyond that, like even when the pitcher lines up on what side of the rubber, or you're watching the catcher throw signals, or there's they're getting signs in the batter's box, and it's all a game to set up the next move, to set up two moves from now, and it's a lot more exciting than people give it credit for. It's not bang bang football, or there's not dunks and a lot of high flying stuff like baseball or even hockey sometimes with some of the physicality, but every tiny little thing in baseball counts all the way down to how the pitcher sets up and how the catcher receives the ball, and they're touching the ball every single pitch. So
definitely like baseball, America's game, and it's kind of, that's what we grew up as. Baseball's America's game. Well, now in this world we live in now, that's back to the day when we had nothing much to do, and just everything was real lot more kickback and slower. Where nowadays everything's fast. What you want, when you want, how you want it. We want action. If something's boring, just change the channel. And so NFL is king right now because it's just got the most action. And so it's kind of taken over. But to me, a purist baseball, I love it. Like I said, I mean, there's nothing better than sitting back watching a baseball game. You can get up and go grab something to drink real quick, come back, and not a whole lot's happened. But like you said, there's so many little moving pieces and little things that are setting something up for later on, and it's just such a mental game. And you don't have to be the most athletic. You see a lot of guys that aren't the most athletic looking guys, but the mental side of it is just unbelievable. Bauer, for instance, he's a science nerd to the T, and he uses that in his training, and that's why he's been so done so well. And it's just cool
and
to
looked
see,
at as unorthodox a little bit too.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like,
so
they're going to be like, what are you doing out there? But if you look at Bauer, he's has a reputation of a little bit of a head case in Cleveland on his way out. But I mean, the dude can pitch, man. He's a stud. Like, he's just a flat out stud.
Absolutely.
So back to being a purist. If you were the commissioner, would you go full-time DH both leagues?
I would. I do like the DH. I would go, if we're gonna have it in one. I think you gotta have them both, especially with all the interleague play. How it's not like it used to be where you only play one division. You're playing, all. So I do. I think the DH is good. I like that. But another thing that I want them to really look hard into, is the shift. I do want them looking at. And I know they've talked about it, but I'm not a big fan of that. To me, it just baffles me because these are professional athletes. That these guys are ball players. I'm like, I sit there and watch constantly where I see everybody's on the right side. I'm like, why does that dude not just laying down a bunt every time, and make them get back, but I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it personally. So many analytics and so many stats. Cause I'll tell you one thing, every time I hit 9 times out of 10, if I hit a fly ball, it was going to left center field. So if someone's going to have charts on me, they're going to put 5 guys there, and it's just like, I get it. It's part of, the strategic part of it, but I don't know. I
think that they may limit. That when we were kids, right? There was the shift, right? But we'd only move an outfielder over a position or something.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't the whole infield, but I think they may limit that at some point to like 2 or 3 players max shifting out of position, or. But then at the same time, there's no real specified zone for defenses to play in, right? It's just traditionally you played in the spot where you've kind of sat your whole life, right? In the right, mid. Short right field if you're a second baseman, who's to say a second baseman can't play right, and the other part of it too is, right, you play different if there's someone on base. If there's someone on first, then you might be covering second for the double play, and that's a shift in of itself, I guess, traditionally, if you're looking at it. So you're going to need to have that flexibility. I don't know what they can do about the shift. I don't love the aesthetics of it when I'm looking at or watching TV.
I think that's what it is, man.
But I think the other part of it too, that that non-traditional pieces, you know, the new playoff format from last year. I know it was COVID, but a bunch of teams kind of got in, and it was I liked it. It was a chase for those the second tier playoff teams, or those kind of that wild card elimination round that was super quick. 2-3 games. And but your team wasn't dead. Mid season, you had a chance to get in and back in a little bit, and I mean, I thought that was cool.
It is, and I think that's the big part of it, and that's the reason, you see it in all the leagues, they're kind of making a little bit of changes and just try to get those teams that, like you said, the season is so long, especially in basketball and baseball, that, you get to halfway through the season and you get teams that you just know they have no shot whatsoever. But, adding in these extra wild cards, now it's kind of giving them a little bit of hope, and then hopefully pushes them to like, hey, let's make that push instead of just taking a dump and just kind of, hey, what it is, let's dump our roster and think about it again next year, So I do like that. It was fun to watch, and it makes it a little more interesting. I said get some other teams in there, in the mix, and eventually we're gonna have a team that comes in there from that bottom wild card that comes make some noise and just messes everything up. So that's what I'm really curious to see, and I'm sure the reason they got it in there,
Yeah, it reminds me of I don't remember, it was maybe 8 or 9 years ago. I think the Brewers, they traded for CC Sabathia and Zach Greinke kind of at the deadline, and all of a sudden they were a pretty big threat. That year they didn't, make a ton of noise in the playoffs, but they made a couple moves late, and then all of a sudden they're in the playoffs in the postseason, hosting some games and doing some good things.
Absolutely.
But anybody can get hot at the right time, and we've seen a couple teams do that. I know it's not, it is early on in the kind of hot stove baseball season. We did a little Instagram post to kind of get some ideas out there, but that George Springer signing and a couple of those other moves kind of got us in the mood to talk a little bit of baseball, and we'll keep monitoring it and have those conversations in the future.
Yeah, a lot of big names out there, a lot of stuff. We're still trying to figure out who's going to go where, who's going to make some trades and whatnot. I mean, in St. Louis, you still got the Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright. You assume they're going to sign together. They're going to play one more year together. Where are they going to go? They're going to be back in St. Louis. Someone, we'll see. So there's a lot of good news going out there still. And
it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of some 1-year contracts, I think, for some guys trying to play for some money. And, that can mean a big boost in some other team's offense or, pitching stats or whatever. But, I mean, like I said, it is early, right? It's January. We got a couple of months to go, but things are going to start falling into place now. The Springer signed. He's probably was the big name free agent that needed to get signed, and everybody's going to start trickling down into their little spots, and we'll see what we come up with.
Absolutely.
Right now though, NBA is in full swing. We just had that huge trade last week in the association. So, I'm sure if you listen to this podcast, enough to know that Harden was traded to the Nets away from the Houston Rockets. They did another 3-way deal, sent LeVert up to Indiana, which, sadly LeVert has a mass and possibly some medical things that come up from that trade that no one knew about. So hopefully he's okay and it's nothing serious. But he's not playing right now as part of that trade in Indiana. But at the same time, Houston's in a little bit of a rebuild mode. Totally different from last year, the last 3 or 4 years. And then, the Nets are definitely different than they had been in the last few years. So real quick, I'll go with you. What do you think how does this trade balance the shift of power in the East? And what do you think it looks like the top 3 to 4 teams in the hierarchy there of who can kind of come out of that conference?
First of all, I think the moves were great for Houston. Houston, I mean, Harden wasn't happy. There's a lot of stuff going on. And I feel like they've understood what you're going to get with Harden. Harden's going to give you the points that he's going to give you. He's going to, he's going to shoot off the charts and he's going to score like crazy. But can he get you over the top? I don't know if he needs help. He needs someone with him. Can Kyrie and Kevin Durant be the ones that help him get there? It's remain to be seen. They look pretty good so far, but we shall see.
Kyrie hasn't played it's tough. Tonight's the first night.
Tonight's Kyrie's playing tonight. Yeah. So, but I love it for Houston's sake. I mean, Victor Oladipo, man, I tell you, when that a couple of years back in Indiana, he was just unbelievable. I mean, he just came out I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but he really became the player that we thought he would be coming out of college and stuff. And he I think once Warren came in and then Brogdon came in and all these other pieces came in, it just didn't fit together. And I feel like he's better to have more handle the ball a little more. And John Wall is perfect for that. like I said, they got some good pieces there. Wood, I mean, man, you might as well just mark him down right now for All-Star and comeback. I mean, most improved player, right?
For sure.
Unbelievable the numbers that guy's putting up. I mean, but yeah, like I said, I think Houston did a tremendous job getting better. Got rid of a piece that just wasn't working for them, and I think got them where they were going to go, and that's about it. But it's going to take a little time to get everybody, on the same page. And like I said, Wall's out, and they got this COVID stuff makes things so much harder to mesh. So I don't know if it's going to be this year. I'm sure by the end of the year you'll start seeing them really start to catch their stride. But I think it's a great deal for them. And like I said, we'll see as far as the Nets go. Man, when you got three big guys like that, but to me, I feel like LeVert was already a great piece there to begin with. I guess you got Dinwiddie out now for the season here, so
they're a little small though. I think that when I think about the Nets, if Jordan is going to play any big minutes, he's getting up in age. They got rid of Jarrett. He went to Cleveland and part of that trade. Who else? I mean, you got Joe Harris and you got a couple other Prince and a couple smaller pieces, but who's really gonna? I think the Bucks are pretty long. And I think
exactly.
That, in a 7-game series, some length could bother you. I think that Miami with Butler and Bam playing together and some length there. Olynyk off the bench. He's kind of a big, but he's kind of a stretch 4 type of player.
Right.
I just don't. I think they're better, and I think they can probably win the East. I mean, it'd be hard to say that they couldn't, right? I mean, it's like they got two all NBA players and another all-star in Kyrie.
Yeah.
But I think the Bucks aren't going to go away quietly.
No.
And I don't think Boston is either. I think Boston is the X factor there. If they're all, Jaylen Brown's turning into an all-star this year.
Yep.
Tatum is already there. They're getting Kemba back. I don't know what kind of shape he's going to be in. They got, Pritchard's coming in as a rookie, kind of give him some good minutes.
Looking good.
They got better, I think, with Thompson in the front court.
Yep.
They got Tice there still. The Williams brothers is there. They got a lot of depth and a lot of length, and they can play a lot of different styles. And and Marcus Smart's a disruptor. I mean, it's
exactly.
Just I can't sleep on him. And then to round out my top 4, probably I got to throw Philly in the mix with Doc Rivers coming in.
Definitely.
They just Harris is borderline all-star material most nights. We know what Simmons and Embiid can do. They got Dwight off the bench now, a little bit more length there to help disrupt things a little bit. And they just got a good cast of characters. Shake Milton, he's one of my favorite fantasy players out there because he could light it up any given night if he gets the minutes. And Doc Rivers, I think that that's just my top 4 there in no particular order. Nets, Bucks, Celtics, and Sixers.
Yeah, and I'm with you 100%. We touched on the NBA on one of our first podcasts, and we didn't really get in a whole lot of depth. We just kind of touched on the NBA and where it was at the time. And at the time, there was a lot of things looked kind of weird. With you got some teams that doing the Bulls were up there and whatnot, and things are kind of playing more into shape now as the season goes on. We're about 10, 15 games in, and things are starting to come back into shape. Like I said, Boston, I'm with you as well. Brooklyn Nets, they got a great team, but Boston, the continuity they have there, just lost Hayward, but they didn't have a place for him. He was gone a lot of times. He was hurt for a lot of time there anyway. So they got a lot of continuity there. The Sixers are right there too. Like you said, Doc Rivers, I think he just helps put them over, hopefully get over the hump where they needed to be, because they have a lot of talent on that team. The Bucks, adding Drew Holiday, is just huge. It's like him and Bledsoe are kind of similar, but he's an upgrade over Drew Bledsoe, like a tremendous upgrade, and
and defensively, he's a stopper.
Especially, still got Middleton there. And like I said, with the Nets, my concern is their length. Like you said, it's Allen's gone, Ed Davis gone. I'm kind of curious to see, are they going to run just small a lot and just run with KD, run more on the 5? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
They might do a little like the Lakers did last year with KD playing the 4-5, and if Jordan's out, DeAndre Jordan's going to give you 20 minutes a game, real hard minutes, but beyond that, it's just rebounds and blocks. He's not putbacks.
Exactly.
So we'll see. At a 7-game series, it has to, you have to grind it out on some of those, especially you getting into the second and third round. It's going to be tough. It's going to be some battles for sure. But they got some bigs to deal with. I mean, Giannis is basically
and that's what's interesting, is the East is now you have 4 or 5 teams in the East. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So.
And you got Embiid, he has some length, and Simmons has some length.
Yeah.
And so there's just some of the, I mean, you got to outscore people, and I get it. One theory that I thought about, I'll throw this on you too before we kind of get ready to wrap up here pretty soon.
Yeah.
You're kind of doing a state of the NBA right now after this trade. But
Eastern Conference,
Yeah. So Steve Nash was a brand new coach this year, and Coach Lucas in Houston was a brand new first-year coach, no coaching experience, and both of their squads kind of blew things up, right? I mean, I think Kyrie kind of went up there, did whatever he wanted. Harden was down here doing whatever he wanted, and I thought, Steve Nash for sure would have a little bit of some clout in the locker room, saying, "I've been there, done that. I'm a 2-time MVP." But he really hasn't gotten a grasp of what that team really is yet, and I just don't know if it's, I know the NBA has always kind of been player centric and that they give them a lot of power there, but I mean, do you think it's a coincidence that these two rookie head coaches got a little bullied into these moves and starting to have to flip the team 20 games in, or what do you feel about, when you see that on paper?
I don't like it, man. Like I said, I mean, to me, it kind of tells me that Kyrie wasn't really sold on the idea of Nash, or I just don't know what the deal is there, or he don't like the coaching style, something that, because I'm like, how are you going to pull this stuff with your rookie coach, as someone who's been there, done that, and is a, that it just baffles me. I mean, the NBA is such a player-driven league, man, that they show their power. I tell you, I mean, like we talked about it before, with LeBron in LA. I mean, and when did they ever coach? Or do they? I mean, how much do they do? Yeah. I mean, those players run the league, they run the teams, and it's what can you do as a coach? I mean, like I said, I'd be curious what would happen if Kyrie pulled this stuff with Popovich or someone like that. I mean, it's just amazing, and I think they take advantage of hey, it's a rookie coach. What's he going to do, really? And I don't know, man. I don't like it, and it drives me nuts. And I don't know.
I think that the good coaches know Popovich ain't going to sign Kyrie, obviously, even if Kyrie wanted to sign with them. Doc Rivers, he experimented last year with PG and Kawhi, having that team there and kind of putting it together on the fly, and it didn't really go as well as he thought it was going to be. And then you see Harrell leave and Doc Rivers leave, and that team is, not that they're bad. I mean, I think the Clippers are definitely a top 4 team in the West, but they still haven't figured out how to mesh together. And give it up for Paul George. I will say that I don't want to bad talk the guy, because he's come around this year. He seems a lot more mature, a lot more of a team leader. And he's I don't love him in every interview, but once in a while he says the right thing, and I think he's going to grow into that leadership role that the vocal leader of the team that they probably need. I mean, Kawhi in the locker room, I'm sure he is the leader, but like I said, there's not that vocal on-court leader that they really, in a lot of ways that the Clippers get on my nerves because they're like almost great. You know what I mean? Like I don't love Morris. I don't love Pat Beverly. I don't love Reggie Jackson. I don't love any of these pieces all by themselves. But you threw in, you throw in Batum, who's resurrecting his career. Yep. He's a leader. He's a kind of a senior leadership on that team.
Yep.
And you put Kawhi and PG, and you get a little. Serge Ibaka is a championship player.
Right.
There's enough there that intrigues you, but just all those other ancillary secondary pieces, they just all get on my nerves.
Yeah, no, I know
all
what
of
you're
them. Yeah. So
I agree with you. The Doc Rivers, I just maybe, and that's why maybe PG seemed like he was a problem last year, because some of the guys just don't like to be coached as hard, and that's why I feel like Doc's perfect for Philadelphia, because these guys are raw. These guys they were missing something. They have so much talent, but so I think he's perfect for Philadelphia. We got Ben Simmons and Embiid, who they need that structure. They need that, whereas I feel like, maybe Paul George coming in was like, I don't know about this, and if I like this style of coaching, this, and more in your face type of coaching, and I have my hands all over this team type deal where, like I said, they're more freely now to kind of, hey, we can kind of run what we want to do, just like I said, like a lot of teams do, so yeah, it's interesting to see, man. And we'll see what comes of it. You know, I'm curious to see Kyrie tonight, see how that plays out with him, you know, actually deciding to come back tonight. So we'll see how that goes.
We'll wrap up here in a couple minutes, but why don't, you know, I'll put you on the spot. Why don't you share one big surprise that you have for the NBA right now, and then I'll share one big disappointment, and then we'll wrap up the show.
Well, one of my biggest surprises, honestly, is just these guys that I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but it's just taking that next step. Particularly New York Knicks. I mean, they're battling Randall, man, unbelievable. Right? He was in New Orleans. And where was he? Was he before that?
The Lakers. He was in the Lakers, but he didn't. He was kind of lost.
Lakers, New Orleans, and now he's finally at that. He's dominating. And then Christian Wood, like we said, those guys just taking that next step, and that's what I want to see. I want to see these young guys come up that you know, in Randall's case especially, that you've always thought he could be that player, and he just never saw. You kind of see glimpses here and there, and now you're starting to see it on a more consistent level, and it's like that's what I want to see. So. But the New York Knicks, I mean, the way they're playing, you know, hovering around 500 in that around 5-6 seed right now. And like I said, after the top four in the East, it's wide open, you know, so you can make your way into that playoff spot real easy. And the Knicks are doing it. So I think the Knicks are probably my biggest surprise how well they're doing, to be honest. How about you? What's yours?
You know, I think that we touched on it briefly before the show started, but you know, I think the Detroit Pistons made a bunch of moves to get better and younger and bigger, and it just hasn't panned out. You know, they got rid of Drummond for no reason, really. And you signed Mason Plumlee, you signed Grant to come in, and you already had Blake Griffin, but you know, you had Derrick Rose as one of the backcourt. They lost Kennard to the Clippers. They really have no other backcourt players that are interesting that you would want to do anything with. They're big and they're slow and they're just not a very good team, and it's costing them a lot of money for a lot of losses. And I just am, you know, you kind of miss Joe Dumars, man. Like at least that dude tried. You know, I don't know who's in charge now as the GM. I have to look that up. I feel kind of silly bringing it up that I don't know, but I mean, whoever made those signings, I don't know what their game plan is, especially if, you know, they're not particular. I mean, Jeremy Grant and Plum, they're not particularly younger pieces, and they had Christian Wood in their backyard. Like they already had him. And
exactly,
what are you doing? Like, I just don't, you don't see what that guy has. I mean, I don't know.
It is, you know, like Jeremy Grant goes and signs there and he's finally starting. He's finally one of the centerpieces, which he's wanted. And, you know, when he was in Oklahoma City, he was a background player in Denver, but even in Denver, we would see those games and where some games where you're like, oh, wow, that's what I want to see. That's what we need from him. And then other games where he just disappears, and it's just like that's what you. So he got paid, and he's starting now. And you know, Malone, say what you want, he was always flip flopping guys and starting lineups and different lineups, and so it's got to be frustrating as a player. And even, you know, Plumlee was what he was, but I think that's where he's best and most effective. Yeah, go ahead and go score me some points and whatever, but you're not effective that way. He's not effective as a starter. He's not a starter in the league, if you ask me. And like you said, when they had Christian Wood right there, I mean, and you just let him go, and now he's flourishing. So,
you know, good discussion for the day. A couple things to look out for. We'll see what the scores are tonight, and we'll track it through the weekend, and then we'll get back together before the weekends, and we'll do our NFL preview, and we'll see how the championship games go. But
absolutely,
you know, as of tonight, man, have fun, everybody. Hope you listen to the podcast. Reach out to us on any of the socials. We'll get with y'all back, and we'll go from there. Dion, thank you, man. We'll have a good day, and we'll get back together again, y'all. Peace out.
Peace out.